Some of the most confusing relationships do not fail because there is no connection. They fail because connection threatens control. And if you have ever felt someone want you, lean in, bond, get close, then suddenly tighten, pull back, go vague, or start acting like your needs are a problem, you might be dealing with avoidant attachment, where control is being used as a substitute for safety. That is what we are breaking down today. This is not a video about blaming avoidance. This is a video about naming a pattern so clearly that your nervous system stops guessing. Because when someone wants you but fears losing control, they create a relationship structure that gives you warmth in doses and uncertainty as a constant. And if you are anxious, uncertainty does not feel neutral. Uncertainty feels like threat. So you start trying to earn safety by being better, softer, easier, more understanding, more available, less needy, less human. You start managing them. You start managing yourself. You start managing the relationship. And then one day you realize you are not in a relationship with them. You are in a relationship with the fear of losing them. If you stay until the end of this episode, you are going to walk away with 3 things. You will understand what control looks like in avoidant attachment when it is subtle and when it is extreme. You will learn how to tell the difference between an avoidant who is triggered but capable versus an avoidant who is using control as a lifestyle. And you will get one calm standard that forces reality without chasing, without drama, and without you shrinking your needs to keep access. Now let me start with the most important truth in this whole topic. Many avoidants do want you. Many avoidants do bond. Many avoidants do feel attached. The problem is not always a lack of feeling. The problem is that for an avoidant nervous system, deep connection can feel like a loss of autonomy, and loss of autonomy feels like danger. So they do something that looks confusing from the outside, but makes perfect sense inside their body. They try to keep the connection while keeping control. They try to keep you close, but not close enough to require full accountability. They try to keep intimacy, but not intimacy that makes them responsible for how you feel. They try to keep access, but not access that comes with a real container. Because a real container means repair. A real container means being influenced. A real container means you matter in a way they cannot manage by distance alone. So the question is not why they pull away. The deeper question is what they are trying to prevent. And the answer, most of the time, is not love. It is loss of control. For many avoidants, control is the nervous system tool they learned early. If their childhood taught them that emotions were unpredictable, that needs were dismissed, that closeness came with pressure, criticism, or engulfment, then control becomes the way their body stays safe. Control means they can exit. Control means they can reduce intensity. Control means they can stay above the emotional waterline. Control means they do not have to depend. And once you understand this, you stop taking it personally in the wrong way. You stop thinking, I am not enough. You start seeing, their nervous system cannot tolerate relational influence. But here is the part people misunderstand. Just because it is nervous system based does not mean it is harmless. Control-based relating has a cost. It costs your peace. It costs your clarity. It costs your ability to relax into love. And if you are anxious, it costs you the most. Because anxious attachment is organized around safety through closeness and clarity. So when closeness is offered and then withdrawn, your system goes into emergency mode. You start scanning. You start interpreting. You start making meaning out of tiny things. You start asking, did I ruin it? Did I ask too much? Should I text? Should I pull back? Should I be chill? And that internal debate becomes the relationship. So today, we are going to name what control actually looks like in these dynamics, because control is not always someone being overtly dominating. Sometimes it is quiet. Sometimes it is the way they manage closeness by keeping everything slightly undefined. Sometimes it is the way they set the pace, but call it natural. Sometimes it is the way they decide when you get access and when you do not, then act confused when you want consistency. So let's define control in the most useful way. Control in avoidant attachment is any pattern that protects their autonomy by limiting your ability to influence the relationship. That is it. It can show up as avoidance of labels. It can show up as avoidance of plans. It can show up as emotional shutdown when you bring up needs. It can show up as an argument that makes your request look irrational. It can show up as disappearing and returning. It can show up as keeping you close enough to bond, but uncertain enough to stay compliant. Control is the method. The goal is safety. Now let's move into the rotating format for this episode, because I want this to feel different from your other videos. This is the control versus connection map. We are going to take the same relationship moments you see every day and translate them into what is actually happening underneath. Then, we are going to give you the clarity filter that tells you whether there is real capacity here or whether you are being regulated. Moment 1 is the closeness surge. They text you daily. They are affectionate. They say things that sound like closeness. They call you when they miss you. They show up in bursts that feel intimate. You feel your body soften because your nervous system reads consistency as safety, and those bursts feel like proof. Moment 2 is the reality cue. It is not always dramatic. It can be tiny. You ask a normal question. What are we doing this weekend? Are we exclusive? Can we talk about what this is? Or you do something that implies expectation. You want consistency. You want repair. You want to be considered. Moment 3 is the control reflex. Their nervous system feels the hint of obligation and it tightens. They might not even know that is what is happening. They just feel irritation. They feel numb. They feel the urge to be alone. They feel the urge to reduce contact. They feel the urge to restore their autonomy. And then they do what control-based attachment does. They create distance to restore safety. Moment 4 is your response. If you are anxious, you feel the shift and you try to fix it. You reach. You explain. You soften your needs. You prove you are safe. You try to bring them back. That pursuit accidentally confirms their prediction that closeness equals pressure. So the control reflex strengthens. Moment 5 is the loop. They return when they miss you, or feel lonely, or feel threatened that you might detach. They come back with warmth. You feel relief. You bond deeper. Then the reality cue happens again, and the control reflex repeats. That is the control loop. And the reason it is so addictive is because relief is powerful. Relief is not love. Relief is your nervous system coming out of threat. And when you get relief from the person who caused the threat, your brain bonds harder. That is intermittent reinforcement. It is one of the strongest bonding mechanisms there is. Now I want to slow down here and make something painfully clear. A person can want you and still be unsafe for you. A person can miss you and still be unable to hold your heart. A person can feel attached and still be building a structure where you will slowly lose yourself. So the question is not, do they want me? The question is, do they have capacity? Because commitment is not a feeling. Commitment is an ability. Commitment is tolerating responsibility, tolerating repair, tolerating the reality that another person's emotional world matters and requires response. Many avoidants can feel deeply and still avoid the container that makes you safe. And control is the way they avoid that container while keeping access. So let's name the most common control behaviors in avoidant attachment. And as I name them, notice which ones you keep excusing. The first is pace control. Everything moves at their speed. You wait for their availability. You wait for their readiness. You wait for their texts. You wait for their emotional openings. And you tell yourself, they are just slow. But the tell is not slow. The tell is that your needs never influence the pace. If you bring up that you feel uncertain, the conversation collapses. Pace control is not slow building. Pace control is you adapting, and adapting until you forget you had needs. The second is definition control. They can act like a partner and still resist the word. They can want exclusivity benefits and still resist mutual agreement. They can say they do not like labels while living inside a relationship. Definition control keeps the escape hatch open. It allows them to say, "We never promised anything," if repair is required. The third is availability control. They decide when they are in and when they are out. They can be intensely present, then suddenly unreachable. And when you react, they call your reaction too much. Availability control creates a nervous system dependency in the anxious partner. You start orienting your day around whether they are in or out. That is not love. That is training. The fourth is emotional topic control. You can talk about anything except what threatens accountability. You can talk about sex, you can talk about chemistry, you can talk about your day, but the moment you talk about how you feel, what you need, what you want clarity on, they get defensive, shut down, or change the subject. Emotional topic control is how they stay close without being responsible. The fifth is rupture control. When there is tension, they disappear. They withdraw, they go cold, they reset. Then they return and act like nothing happened. That teaches you not to bring up pain. That teaches you to accept the reset. That teaches you to keep your needs small to keep access. And now I want to name the part that anxious people do not want to hear but need to hear with warmth. If you keep accepting control as normal, you train the relationship to stay control-based. Not because you are weak, because your nervous system is trying to preserve attachment. But we are not here to preserve attachment at any cost. We are here to preserve your peace. Now let me make this real with a case file, because control is easiest to understand when you can see it in motion. Imagine this. The connection starts warm. They text you daily. They are affectionate. They say things that sound like closeness. They call you when they miss you. They show up in bursts that feel intimate. You feel your body soften because your nervous system reads consistency as safety, and those bursts feel like proof. Then a reality cue happens. It is not a fight. It is not drama. It is a normal sentence. You ask about the weekend. You ask if you are exclusive. You ask if you can be considered in a plan. You ask for clarity in a calm tone. And you watch the shift. Their energy tightens. They take longer to reply. They become vague. They say they are overwhelmed. They say they hate pressure. They say they are not ready. And the part that confuses you is they still want access. They still want your attention. They still want to see you. They still want intimacy. They just do not want the part where your needs become real enough to require response. That is control as safety. The goal is not to hurt you. The goal is to restore a feeling of autonomy. Now watch what happens next, because this is where people get trapped. You feel the shift, and your anxious system goes into emergency mode. You start scanning. You start interpreting. You start crafting the perfect message. You start trying to bring the warmth back. You might even soften your request and say it was not a big deal. You might apologize for wanting clarity. You might try to be easy so they do not pull away. And when you do that, something dangerous happens quietly. You teach their nervous system that withdrawal works. You teach the dynamic that your needs will shrink to preserve access. You teach the relationship that control wins. And now the loop gets stronger, because they do not have to develop capacity, they just have to manage distance. Then you hit the next moment. You get tired. You stop initiating. You become quieter. You pull your energy back. Not as a tactic, but because your body cannot keep living in suspense. And suddenly, they come toward you. They text more, they check in, they act warm. They might even sound vulnerable. You feel relief, and relief is powerful. Relief feels like love when you have been in threat. So you open back up. You give access again. And then, once they feel secure that you are back, the control reflex returns. They do not change the structure. They restore the old rhythm. Closeness when they want it, distance when it costs them. This is why you feel addicted. Not because you are weak, because your nervous system is being trained through intermittent reinforcement. Now, here is the part that saves you. You do not have to hate them to stop participating. You do not have to become cold. You just have to stop confusing their surge with capacity. A surge is not a choice. A surge is often a threat response. If they only move toward you when they fear losing you, the relationship is being regulated by threatened access, not built by steady intention. And the only way to know what is real is to apply a 2-week control test that does not involve chasing, punishing, or lectures. For the next 2 weeks, you become congruent. You match access to clarity. You stay warm, but you stop overfunctioning. You stop initiating like it is your job to keep the connection alive. You stop offering partner-level benefits when partner-level agreement is missing. You do not create drama, but you do create structure. And then you watch for 3 specific behaviors. 1. Do they move toward clarity without you begging? 2. Do they become more consistent without you performing? 3. When there is distance, do they repair, not just return? Because returning is not repair. Returning can be a way to restore control. Repair is when they acknowledge the impact and adjust behavior so uncertainty reduces over time. If those 3 things increase across 2 weeks, you are dealing with fear with capacity. If those 3 things do not increase, and the only thing that increases is intensity when you detach, you are dealing with control as a lifestyle. And that is the moment you stop negotiating with yourself. Because the goal is not to prove they want you. The goal is to see if they can hold you. Wanting is common. Capacity is rare. And you do not build a life on rare bursts. You build a life on steady choice. Now, what breaks control without you becoming cold? The answer is not chasing. The answer is standards. But not angry standards. Calm standards. Standards that do not demand. Standards that simply reveal. Because standards do not control them. Standards reveal them. Before I give you the standard, I want to give you the capacity filter, because this is what keeps your analysis from becoming confusing. Fear with capacity looks like this. They might still need space. They might still move slowly. They might still dislike labels. But when you bring reality, they do not punish you. They do not make you beg. They can have a calm conversation. They can offer clarity in some form. They can offer exclusivity. They can offer consistency. They can offer future plans. They can offer repair. They can say, I want to keep building. I move slowly, but I am choosing you. That sentence is capacity. Fear without capacity looks like control as lifestyle. Every time you ask for clarity, they collapse. They shut down. They disappear. They get defensive. They offer vague promises that never turn into behavior. They keep your access high and your security low. They want you close, but not close enough to require them to show up. They want connection, but only if they can keep control. And if you live in that structure long enough, you start confusing anxiety for love. You start calling hypervigilance intuition. You start calling relief romance. You start calling crumbs hope. So here is the calibration question that cuts through everything. Are they creating more safety in my life or more uncertainty? Are they making my nervous system steadier or more alert? Are they moving forward in behavior or staying in the same loop? Those questions cut through chemistry. Those questions cut through fantasy. Those questions cut through your mind trying to solve them. Now, let's talk about the phrase people use that hides the control loop. They say, I am afraid of losing them. And that sounds like love. But in many avoidant dynamics, what they fear is not losing you as a person. What they fear is losing control of the dynamic. They fear that if you have a standard, they will have to change. They fear that if you have clarity, they will be accountable. They fear that if you can leave, they cannot regulate you by uncertainty. So they keep you in a zone where you are attached but unsure. And the moment you start acting like you might leave, they surge. They reach out. They get sweet. They get intense. They pull you back. Then, once the threat is gone, they restore control by reducing closeness again. That is why your body feels like it is on a roller coaster. That is why you cannot relax. And now, I want to give you the calm standard that breaks this without drama. It is warmth without collapse. Warmth means you do not punish. You do not disappear to win. You do not become cold. Collapse means you do not return to overfunctioning the moment they give you a little attention. So when the control reflex shows up, you respond with calm, and you reduce access to match reality. You stop giving partner-level benefits to a structure that is not choosing you. And you do it without anger. You do it without speeches. You do it with congruence. Here is the sentence that does this cleanly. I like you, and I enjoy what we have. I am not asking for intensity. I am asking for clarity and consistency that matches how we are acting. I am not available for partner-level closeness without being on the same page. If you are not ready, I respect it, but I will step back. That sentence is not an ultimatum. It is a boundary that turns on the lights. It tells them, I am not here to be managed by uncertainty. And then the most important part happens. You observe behavior. Not immediately, not in one day, over 2 weeks. Do they move toward clarity and consistency, or do they try to restore access without changing anything? Because here is the truth. If they have real capacity and real interest, they will move toward you when you stop collapsing. If they were only using you as a regulator, they will not step up. They will either disappear or offer you just enough to pull you back into the loop. That is why standards work. They do not control them, they reveal them. Now, I want to speak to the anxious listener with something deeply stabilizing. If someone only values you when they feel you slipping away, they are not responding to love. They are responding to threatened access. Love does not require threat to show up. Love shows up through steady choice. So, if you stop chasing and they surge, you do not instantly interpret that as a win. You interpret it as the pattern being exposed. You stay warm and you stay measured. You let consistency rebuild trust before you give deep access again. You do not reward panic with instant full access. Because if you do, you teach their nervous system that they can keep you with minimal effort. And you deserve better than being kept by effort spikes. You deserve steady choice. Now, I want to speak to the avoidant listener too, because some avoidants watch this channel and they genuinely want to understand themselves. If you recognize yourself in this, understand the difference between control and care. Care is wanting their nervous system to feel safe. Control is wanting your nervous system to feel safe at their expense. If you reach out only when you feel them detaching, then withdraw again once you feel secure, you are training them to become anxious and distrustful. If you care, practice one small repair, one sentence that signals choice, one consistent behavior that reduces uncertainty. You can say, I like you. I move slowly, but I am choosing you. That sentence is not a prison, it is honesty. It prevents the person you care about from spiraling, and it gives you a chance to build real intimacy instead of a control loop. Now, let's close with the most freeing truth for both sides. Connection cannot thrive where control must be preserved. Love cannot grow in a structure where one person has to stay uncertain so the other person can feel safe. That is not safety. That is management. And if you are the anxious person listening, you do not have to earn consistency by shrinking. You do not have to accept control as normal. You do not have to decode someone into choosing you. Your job is not to chase them into commitment. Your job is to create the conditions where reciprocity is possible and then observe what they do. If they step up with consistent behavior and repair, you build. If they do not, you stop investing in a structure that costs you your peace. Because the right person does not need to be scared of losing you to finally treat you well. The right person chooses you while they still have you. Welcome to PsychBond. You're safe here.